The Planning Commission meeting of December 12th, or December 8th to order. May we have a roll call?
It's a roll call vote for the December 8th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Bedden. Here. Brooks.
Present.
Hart.
Here.
Haynes. Commissioner Haynes. Commissioner Hodge. Hodge. Latour.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Thomas. Commissioner Thomas. Vickers.
Present.
And Vogel.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Director Collins, do we need to say anything now about the number of members present?
How many is present?
7.
7. Yes, we do. We need to make the statement about our bylaws in regards to 8 and fewer commissioners.
And if we have 8 or fewer commissioners, then an applicant can choose to defer without it going against their count. Is that correct?
Actually, it does go against their number of deferrals that they requested. So for everybody that's in the audience and also online, the board or the commissioners listening, the Planning Commission bylaw says that 8 commissioners or less, since you have to have 6, to approve one, that the request for deferral can be asked by the applicants, but that request goes against the number of deferrals that they can request for the application.
So everybody in attendance understand the opportunity before you? We only have 3 items on our regular agenda, so why don't we have a reading of the consent agenda, please? Sorry, before we do that, we need to approve the minutes from last meeting. So do we have a motion for that?
Move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Bedden.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Hart. Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
Haynes. Hodge. Latour.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Thomas. Commissioner Thomas. Vickers.
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Unanimous, 3 absent, excuse me.
Thank you. Now may we have a reading of the consent agenda?
Following is the consent agenda for the Little Rock Planning Commission's meeting of December 8th, 2022. You have 1 item on consent withdrawal, item D, file number Z9715, August renewals, Hyde Park Project, PRD, southwest corner of West 26th Street and Jefferson Street. On November 15th, the applicant requested this item be withdrawn. Staff supports that request. Next are the items on consent deferral. Item A, Z5502J, West Canis Storage, revised PDC, west of 17301 Canis Road. On November 22nd, the applicant requested this application be deferred to the January 12th Planning Commission agenda. Staff supports that request. Item C, Z9733, Bell Chevrolet Commercial PCD, northwest corner of Highway 10 and Interstate 430. The applicant submitted a letter to staff on November 21st requesting this application be deferred to April 13th, 2023. Staff supports that request. Item number 3, Z9739, Love Family Care Facility Special Use Permit, 5918 Drexel Avenue. The applicant failed to send notifications to surrounding property owners as required. Therefore, staff recommends this application be deferred to the January 12th Planning Commission agenda. And item number 10, Z9731, Bernier Short-Term Rental, PDC, 208 Cherokee Circle. The applicant failed to send notifications to surrounding property owners as required, and therefore staff recommends this application be deferred to the January 12th agenda. Next are the items on consent approval. Item B, Z7069D, Tisdale Properties Self-Storage PDC, 8500 West Markham. Staff recommends approval of the requested PDC zoning, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs E and F and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 1, S867Q9, Chenal Valley Phase 18L, revised preliminary plat, south side of Shalamont Drive at Coral Circle. Staff recommends approval of the requested preliminary plat, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D and E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 2, S1499R, Lot 8R, Block 309, original City of Little Rock replat, northwest corner of West 11th and South Cross Streets. Staff recommends approval of the proposed replat and associated variances, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 5, Z8284A, R&D Holdings, Office Warehouse, conditional use permit, 8707 Mapleville Pike. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP to allow the construction of a new office warehouse facility, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 6, Z9737, Haven Health Management, conditional use permit, 5201 Stagecoach Road. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraph E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 7, Z9738, Centro Cristiano Little Rock, conditional use permit, 1200 South Cleveland Street. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions noted in paragraphs D, E, and F, and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 8, Z9742, Greenhall Accessory Dwelling, conditional use permit, 3806 West Capitol Avenue. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP, subject to comments and conditions as noted in paragraph E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item number 9, Z4768D, Valley Oaks Court, revised POD, north side of Mapleville West Road at Angel Court. Staff recommends approval of the requested revised POD zoning, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F, and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. And item number 11, LU 2022-1803, Canis Road, land use review, Chenal Parkway to Asbury Road on either side of Canis Road, and staff recommends approval. That concludes the consent agenda.
Thank you. May we have a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including all staff comments and conditions.
Second that.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Bedden,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Haynes, Commissioner Haynes, Commissioner Hodge, Latour,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Vickers,
Yes, just to say here, Chairman, it looked like in the chat box, Commissioner Haynes was trying to get in. I don't know if we need to, who needs to let him in, but in the chat box, you'll see him. He's trying to get in.
Great. We'll let Brad work on that while we continue the vote.
and Commissioner Thomas. Vogel.
Yes.
Consent agenda approved, 7-3.
Thank you. We will give,
One second. Cat Hodges is also trying to get in and can't get in.
I was having a hard time getting in, so I think that's why a lot of people aren't able to get in today.
thank you for that update. Well, regardless, our minutes and the consent agenda passed unanimously with those that were able to get in. So if your item was on the consent agenda, it has been approved, and you're welcome to leave at this time. We have 3 items on the regular agenda, and we will start with item E.
Mr. Chairman, item E, file number Z9714. This is Haynes Bed and Breakfast Special Use Permit located at 6901 Shamrock Drive. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to allow the use of the existing 2-story single-family residence located at 6901 Shamrock Drive as a bed and breakfast with a maximum stay of 14 days. The owner will reside at the residence and utilize one bedroom as a bed and breakfast rental unit. The rental unit will include one bedroom, one full-size bathroom, and a living area. The applicant notes that there are two entrances leading to the rental space, one being an interior door and the other being a sliding glass door opening up to a patio area. The proposed use of the property will conform with the Section 3654E1, paragraphs A through D of the city zoning ordinance, which provides the provisions for bed and breakfast uses. Staff does not support the requested SUP to allow the bed and breakfast at 6901 Shamrock. The property is surrounded by R2 zoning in all directions. There are no existing commercial zoning or uses located in the surrounding area. The nearest non-residential use is located over 1,400 feet to the east along North McKinley Street. Staff believes that the proposed occupancy will create an increase in vehicular and pedestrian traffic and will have an adverse impact on the immediate area. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the requested special use permit.
Is the applicant present? Well, as per usual, you are welcome to address the commission. You will get 20 minutes, so will any opposition. There is one person in opposition. You're welcome to defer your time to the opposition and offer the rebuttal, but we will leave that up to you. Well, please come up to the podium and let us know what you choose.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. My name is Karen Haynes. My husband is James Haynes, and we've applied for a special use permit for the bottom section of our home. My husband is a hospital administrator and is a CEO of 2 medical facilities and has been in the medical industry for about 35 years. We live very close by all of the hospitals and doctors' complexes, and we have extra space down below. This bed and breakfast is not your typical bed and breakfast. This is not for pleasure use. This is a working type facility for doctors, traveling nurses only, and the medical profession. We did not have a use for the bottom section of the home, and so we thought it would be a wonderful thing to be able to do for traveling nurses and doctors that come in to relieve people from the other hospitals and so forth on the weekends, and special traveling nurses that do long stints at times. We put together a very nice combination of about 987 square feet with a full bedroom, a full bathroom. It's going to have a spacious, very spacious living room. It can accommodate at least 2 people. The bedroom is a full bedroom, full-size bedroom with a closet, and we also intend to either do a pull-out or a Murphy bed to make additional rooms if there would be more than one nurse or doctor or whatever. This is not for vacation use. It is for the medical facility only and its families. And as a matter of fact, I spoke with a couple who came by to see me this morning, the Coffers, as a matter of fact. They live up the street. And they were quite pleased about us trying to help the medical community. It seems as though many doctors and traveling nurses are having a desperate time finding anywhere that is nice to stay. In addition to this, it's going to have a full kitchen and a full-size washer and dryer down below, a patio, and a secluded walkway, and plenty of parking. Once again, this is not for an entire family. This is for, it could be only for a doctor or a medical professional's family, or during work, for work engagement only. It is not for hospitality at all. So it was something that we felt like was very important for the area because we are in the medical vicinity, and We've heard this for years and years and years, how they're having problems in finding anywhere to stay. They've actually put people in dorms before, and they have no way to do their clothing. They have nowhere to eat. They have to go out for every meal. And that's hard after you've worked 12 or 14 hours a day. So they're 3 minutes from the medical community, and we felt that it was quite appropriate. And so I have spoken to people, our neighbors, people up and down the street, and they have been quite happy about it. I have an anesthesiologist that lives across the street, and a nurse that lives across the street, 2 doctors down the street. Everyone has been very accepting, and I've had a lot of people stop and ask me about the sign in my yard. So I actually had somebody come by this morning, and I explained to them what it was. I think people may be under the impression that it's a vacation rental, and that it's not the use at all. So I just wanted to clear that up, that it is for the medical community. So does anyone have any questions or anything? We've got some maps that we've printed out and some information that we've printed out with regards to our intention on this bed and breakfast. And so we know that there are several in the area. However, there is one that is on Hughes Street, which receives much more traffic than we do. There is also one not terribly far away that is on Plaza Drive. There's one at the corner of Aberdeen and Amherst. So they're in several areas, but they don't do exactly what we do. We are not open to the public per se. I'd be happy to pass these around for you. We brought enough for everyone to take a look at if they'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will call you back up after the opposition has a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anita Westbrook.
I really just had some questions, but it was explained to me that to ask questions, I really needed to fill out the little card. So one of the questions, and so is this an appropriate time for me to ask questions?
Most certainly.
Okay, so one question was about
can you
the
ask it?
parking.
Are you asking us or are you asking?
Well, I was asking Mr. and Mrs. Hayes.
Well, these are recorded, so
Okay.
we have to face the mic.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to be friendly. So, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, you did mention about the plentiful parking. I just wondered what your plans for parking are.
We'll have her answer when they come back up.
When they come
Okay,
back up.
all right. And then also, I understand that the plan is to rent only to medical personnel, but I wasn't sure how that would be accomplished. I'm not familiar with the legalities of such things, but I just wanted to ask about that. And after, if the permit is approved, is it conditional that it's only to short-term medical personnel in the area, such as nurse travelers? And then after the city passes the short-term rental ordinance, will, even though the permit, if the permit is approved, would this facility be required to comply with it? But I was also curious what medical facilities the Mr. Hayes is CEO of. So thank you. That's just a personal curiosity.
Well, those are very good questions.
Well, I can address 2 of those questions that's not addressed by
Figured
the
you would
applicant.
be able to.
First of them is the short-term rental ordinance. That is before the Board of Directors right now. I have deferred that decision till I think maybe sometime in February or so, action. But at that time, any bed and breakfast or short-term rental, because that, if it is approved as written or modified to that such, would fall underneath that approved ordinance for compliance with that. And that is even ones that is operational unless they fall underneath a planned development, which in itself has its own conditions as set for there. But we would look to ensure that at the very least that life safety issues like carbon monoxide detectors, those types of situations would be incorporated in any short-term rental, or whether it's a previously approved plan development or not. So that would answer that. For the other question about where somebody works, that is not an item that is before this commission, nor cannot be answered. That might be a private question that can be addressed, not by this commission, but the individuals, not part of this meeting, for that. And the other one I would also like to address, as far as one of them had to do with the medical field on there particularly. Mr. Moore, was that part of the original application as written?
Well, and one thing I was going to bring up kind of relates to that also. In the applicant's cover letter, they noted that the maximum stay will be 14 days, which complies with a bed and breakfast use. Sounds like she may be describing something longer term than that. We need to verify that. And in the applicant's cover letter, they noted that the remaining rooms be rented for a period not to exceed 14 days, preferably to persons in the medical field seeking a place to stay for a couple of weeks while in town conducting business. So we need to clarify, whether this is going to be limited to 14 days. If not, then we're not talking about a short-term rental, bed and breakfast. We're talking about some other type of use, maybe a longer-term rental. Also, there is to be no second kitchen. The applicant mentioned a second kitchen. That creates a duplex, which is a totally separate use and needs a separate zoning for duplex, so there can't be a second kitchen in the dwelling.
Can the applicants come back up, please?
Yeah, and my question, while the applicants come back up to Mr. Overton, is this. I would like clarification on whether this commission could limit the rental use to a specific industry. I understand we could vote on the rental, but I don't know that we can limit it to a specific industry like the medical field or.
No, you could not.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think
Well, I
we
think
would not
that's
be able
off the
to.
table.
Yeah.
I think if the planning commission is to consider this, they cannot consider it based upon a medical facility or a medical profession. It is, they may choose to, people that rents that and advertise it as that, but I think there's rental rights associated with that we cannot discriminate, and we cannot make that choice.
That's correct. And you can always look at public safety, health, welfare, traffic, limit the amount of people that are using the business in regards to parking and that type of thing, but you can't limit it to just medical people.
I think that clarifies that. So if we proceed, any vote will be made on that measure.
Correct. Yeah, so the questions that Miss Westbrook brought up were, can you describe the plentiful parking, please?
We have ample parking even at this point. We have a double driveway as it is with a side pad over to the side. Our intention, however, is to build another one that would go through that they could walk from there through the gateway, down a little pretty walkway and down back behind the patio. So it would have like a little garden area, and then it would have a patio underneath it. It's a covered patio, so they would have close proximity to get to the walkway down through to the back.
Sounds nice. So we answered the question, I think, this body cannot exclude the rental to only medical personnel, so that's not in the consideration of this body, correct?
That's correct. And I can't give you legal advice, but I would recommend that if you go down the route where you want to just start limiting people that use your business, if you're advertising and that type of thing, or it's open to the public, you may want to talk to a lawyer about, those questions, because you may run into some issues.
Yeah, we'll do that. Thank you.
I do have a question, if I may.
Oh, certainly, yes.
There is another Airbnb in the area that is called Nurse's Nest or something of that sort. And I I'm just asking, I'm sure that you can name it anything that you want, but I would assume that that would apply for them as well.
That's not before this commission, and I'm not going to go on.
We don't know if
saying
they're-
anything, and, you know, people can name their business, but that's not before us, and we're not going to consider that.
We've been trying to tackle the short-term rental issue for well over 3 years, so we're trying to get closer and closer each month to having an ordinance that will allow the city to enforce certain, changes to the market conditions. I think we answered the first, the second, and the third question. And Mr. Collins, I think, answered the fourth question, which was, will this convert upon the adoption of the short-term rental ordinance that's before the planning committee, or before the board of directors? And it will, once we pass or don't pass this item. So I think at this time, if any other commissioners have questions, we would like to ask them. Do any other commissioners have questions at this time?
I had one clarification. I think I heard Monday say that if there's another kitchen, it's a duplex.
Right.
I heard the applicant say they have a separate kitchen. Am I correct?
Do y'all have 2 kitchens that y'all are?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. There's only
Not at
one
this
kitchen.
time. I would be building that if they in fact wanted that, or if I felt like my customer would want that.
Well, I think that would then be a non-conforming situation.
Well, that
This application does not account for that. If a second kitchen is proposed at any time to build, the city of Little Rock cannot permit it or inspect it until it goes through that zoning change for that second kitchen. And so you can, that's not on the table today to be voted on. I'm just informing you that it cannot be part of this. If you choose to have one in the future, it has to go through the correct process to allow that.
Then what we'll do is, we won't add a kitchen. We'll just keep it the way it is. And if we, at some point in time, need to add one, we'll go through the proper zoning. How's that?
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners virtually? I hope everybody was able to get on. Brad, were they? Okay, excellent. Commissioners online, do y'all have any questions?
I do have a question. I'm just wondering why this application wasn't for a short-term rental. Why is this considered bed and breakfast?
We figured it was, when my wife went and talked to the planning commission, they said short-term rental. I assumed it was bed and breakfast when I sent in the application, but I also included in the application short-term rental. So if it needs to be short-term rental, then we can change it to that. I have no problem with that.
Mr. Chair, to further answer that question, it qualifies as a bed and breakfast under the current ordinance allowances for bed and breakfast, because the applicants are going to live on the site and just rent out a room of the residents. So it doesn't qualify as a short-term rental.
Right, that's what I was going to say, is since they're living on the premises, it requires them to go under this classification.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Any other questions from commissioners at this time?
I have a simple one. If it's a bed and breakfast, are they bound to serve breakfast?
Our intention is to do, depending upon a diet, we're going to ask people, if they have allergies and that sort of things. We were thinking about a parfait, fruit, a continental type breakfast.
Every day.
Mr. Moore has a question, or a comment, rather, probably.
To further that also, there's not a requirement to serve breakfast. The ordinance says that they may serve a continental breakfast.
Thank you.
Great question. Anybody else?
Staff's recommendation to now was based on parking and what else?
Our main objection primarily is because it's located in the center of a R2 zone, single-family neighborhood.
Thank you.
Any other questions before the applicants? Hearing none, I guess we'd entertain a motion.
Move for the approval of item Z9714, including all staff's comments and conditions except the recommendation of denial.
Second.
Just keep in mind, if you're voting yes, we're voting in the affirmative, so you will be voting for the approval of this application. If you're voting no, you will be voting for the denial of this application, as the staff has recommended denial. So may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Bedden? Brooks?
Yes.
Hart?
Yes.
Haynes?
Yes.
Hodge?
Yes.
Latour?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Thomas? Commissioner Thomas? Vickers?
Yes.
Vogel?
No.
Motion passes.
Enjoy your bread and breakfast.
As far as the young lady asked about my, I guess, the company I work for, I'll be happy.
Y'all can talk about that in the hall.
I'll be happy to tell her.
Y'all can talk about that in the hall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We
All right.
appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Don't forget to come back if you add a kitchen.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
All right. I guess we'll move on to item 4 then, the David O. Dodd.
Item number 4, file number Z5859D. This is the David O. Dodd School Conditional Use Permit located at 6423 Stagecoach Road. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for use of a school in an R2 zone. Additionally, the applicant is requesting to use portable buildings which remain on the property after the Little Rock School District closed the David O. Dodd Elementary School in 2021. The elementary school campus is located at the corner of Old Stagecoach Road and East David O. Dodd Road. The current structure on the site is 31,245 square feet in area and was built in 1980. This square footage does not include 4 portable buildings at the rear of the property. The area surrounding the campus is primarily R2. However, the property to the south is zoned PDC for use as a single-family residence and a special event center. A paved parking lot is located on the north and east sides of the existing school building. There are approximately 80 parking spaces on the site. A paved driveway from Stagecoach Road serves as a primary access to the site, and a second access from David O. Dodd Road is located along the east property line. There is a significant amount of driveway space on the site to allow for drop-off and pickup queuing. Pinnacle Classical Academy is a pre-K through 12th grade school. The current school enrollment is 50 students with 14 staff. The school's goal is to grow over the next 15 to 20 years at this location. They see this location as a place to expand and one day add a new gymnasium, multipurpose rooms, and outdoor play areas. Staff is generally supportive of the property's continued use as a school. However, staff is not supportive of the continued use of the portable buildings at the rear of the property. Section 36203A of the city zoning ordinance makes it clear that the use of temporary school buildings is only reserved for the Little Rock School District. Therefore, based on the fact that the temporary school buildings are approved exclusively for the Little Rock School District, as per ordinance, staff believes that the temporary school buildings should be removed from the site since the LRSD has vacated the site and no longer uses these buildings. Therefore, staff recommends denial of the requested conditional use permit, specifically regarding the applicant's desire to reuse the portable buildings on the site, which were intended for exclusive use by the Little Rock School District.
Is the applicant present?
Good evening, Jonathan Hope with Hope Consulting. We submitted the application for this conditional use permit. As stated, we are applying because of the school, and then in addition, asking for the 4 portable buildings to stay on the property. Feel like this is an opportunity to maximize this property as it was originally intended. The portable buildings are pretty well screened, tucked in behind. This school is very small, so 50 students right now. They will have 2 different drop-off pickup times. So we don't see that there is much of an issue on traffic. And, you know, the Little Rock School District was here, as is stated, so that's why they're there. There's 4 existing. We're not asking for any additional buildings. We're only asking to keep the 4 that are there now that would allow them to move right in and start this school. And Duncan is here. He's the headmaster of the school. He could probably answer several questions from you guys if you have any questions for him.
I'm sure we have a lot.
Okay.
So there is no opposition today. That's filled out a card. So I guess, you know, we can start with the commissioner's questions. Would anybody like to begin?
Sure. So what is the time process for how long the students will be in the pods? And then the construction as far as the inside?
Yeah, so there doesn't need to be major construction on the site. There definitely needs to be some improvements and some adjustments before it would be move-in ready. So as far as the timeline, we were hoping to be able to use maybe no more than a semester, a year at most, and then we could transfer into the actual main building like normal. Then they would become, you know, whatever we needed, you know, additional facilities for, you know, whatever we may need, storage or et cetera. But they're not really in our long-term plans. They're more a temporary resolution to our current situation as opposed to something that we want to be in there long-term or permanently. So our current situation, we rent space from a church off Colonel Glenn and down Colonel Glenn off 36th. And we love them. They're so thankful. We're so thankful for them. But the nature of sharing rental spaces is just challenging. And so these portables offer us an avenue to get off of that property and into our own space very quickly. And then within the next year, Lord willing, by school year of fall of 23, we could have the improvements we needed to actually begin using the main building. But if not, then by fall of 24.
Okay. Will these buildings, these pods, be evaluated by the any type of health organizations as far as being able to have the students in there? I know they've been sitting for a long time. So what's the process on that?
Absolutely. We have had them professionally inspected already as part of our due diligence for inspecting the property. And Bill, I don't know if you have any answer other than that, but you can add if you would like to.
Hello, I'm Bill Pendergast. I'm a real estate agent with Colliers representing the school. I'm also on the board of Pinnacle Classical Academy, and it's where my children attend the school. To answer your question, Commissioner, the property has been inspected by a professional inspector. It passed with flying colors. We will have to go through all safety and health agency requirements to operate as a school in the property. So we do anticipate inspections by the authorities that need be before we occupy the property.
Thank you.
I guess that'd be the Department of Education, the Health Department. What other agencies would be required for occupation?
Whatever the city requires. I'm not even sure exactly what the full array of those are. We're willing to have everyone that needs to inspect it and sign off do that.
Just being a school, it's a little unique, so obviously the fire and safety aspect.
So I'm very familiar with that area. I grew up over there, very familiar with David Dodd. I did a lot of mentoring over there as well. School is in a great location. The building is in a great location. There's several great communities that surround that. Kudos to the growth of your school. And for those reasons, I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Any other commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this Todd Hart, I'm going to support this too. I'll support this as well, and I appreciate staff bringing up the issue of the portable buildings. But I'm willing to overlook that in order to get a new school in this location. You know, these special purpose facilities like this, whether it be a church or a school or anything that's special use, sometimes they're hard to backfill. So the idea that a private school is going to end up on Stagecoach and take over that David O. Dodd Elementary I think is a great thing for the city. So again, I appreciate staff bringing up the portable building issue, but I'm gonna overlook that today, and I'm in full support of this one.
Any other commissioners have any questions for the application?
This is Latour. I don't have any questions other than I agree with the previous two commissioners. Schools are hard. We're vacant schools all over the place, and to put this to such a good use, I'd be more comfortable if they put a 3 or 4 year max on those portable buildings. But even so, it's a good project that ought to move forward. I'm for it.
Would the applicants be agreeable to amending their application at this time for capping the amount of years y'all would use the, portable buildings? That's my concern, is it becomes not portable and not, a temporary structure as it's designed. We're kind of setting a precedent here by going against the ordinance, which is designed for the Little Rock School District, and, granting a condition potentially that's unique.
I got a question before they answer that. So that ordinance is only granted to the Little Rock School District. That doesn't really, to me, in real life, even seem to be fair. How long did the Little Rock School District use those portable buildings out there? The staff, do you know?
We don't have an exact time frame for the school, but they have to renew that every 5 years. And it was done at the time in multiple schools for just temporary use and expansion for students at that location. Staff's concern is we have never proposed any buildings like that on a temporary basis and brought it to the commission unless there was a time frame associated with it. And that was our concern. Also, the concern and again, we're not opposed to the use of a school, even a private school. But and I did bring this to the applicant's consultant's attention, and why our opposition mainly is Little Rock School District operates different than the private or charter schools. They do have a bus system. The schools, even before you today, to my best of my knowledge, do not have a bus system in place. So all students will be dropped off and picked up. They might have a carpool, I believe, or something like that with them, but it is not a bus system. And not having a bus system in those schools can cause traffic concerns and routing concerns on site. Even though Little Rock School District does have kids that are dropped off, they do have and I don't know what the percentage is of this one because it's not in operation and we couldn't ask, but you're guaranteed to have more students being dropped off on a private school scenario than the public school, LR, Little Rock School District. And so that does raise concern at any location where that is located at. And we do typically we put pickup and drop off times based upon traffic studies. They are tied to the special use permit or the conditional use permit. And the school buildings, if used, are tied to a specific time frame. Because we don't want them necessarily used forever. And even the Little Rock School District was tied to a time frame to come in and renew, to look at what they're operating.
Okay.
So you have a few comments and questions before you. Would you like to try and address them?
Absolutely.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering if staff proposed that to the applicant, giving them the same 5 years potentially if this is passed?
The Planning Commission, in the application, can set conditions on a application before them for consideration. I believe, Mr. Overton, you can, I think that is part of the process. And for looking at life safety, health, and welfare. So if there is a condition that the commissioners,
In regards to time,
to come back and reconsider this for a temporary use of the buildings.
yes, you can set a time restriction. And then if they haven't went into their full facility, they have to come back and then you can reconsider extending it or not.
If I may ask a question in return, would setting conditions on the time frame of the portables change the outcome? Can we vote on that today and not move this later down the road?
Yeah, we'd do it within a motion for an amendment to the,
Well, I would just preface that by saying any condition that you're offered cannot be done based upon whether it is going to get a vote or not at the commission.
Right, and it would be you that would have to, on the podium, and if you're willing to consider a time restriction, you have to understand that just because you agree to one, that the commission may not necessarily approve it. And also you need to state on the record that you're not under any stress, duress. No one is forcing you to do this. You're willing to do that and change your application.
Yes, so the reason I asked that question is due to the contract we have with the seller, we didn't want to delay the time frame and have to reapply through it with a new application with different uses and amendments to that. We would prefer to agree, if we could, for a 5-year limitation on those portables, considering on the floor today, if possible.
Chairman Vogel, is the commission willing to accept the applicant's amendment?
I was going to ask that very question to the commission. I certainly think that it would be reasonable for us as a commission to have the same expectation of all schools using temporary buildings to come back within a predetermined time frame. If 5 is the standard for the Little Rock School District, I think it's very reasonable to expect, a private institution to have to come back every 5 years to reapply for the use of these temporary buildings. I would hope y'all's enrollment grows and y'all have the capital to invest in permanent structures, and, I'll let my fellow commissioners make their own decision.
Would it be important for the applicant, not only the 5 years, but to also stipulate that the applicant has an opportunity to come back and reapply if necessary?
And exactly.
Yeah, that is
If you say it's 5 years and that's it.
No, they can come, the applicant can come back at any time.
Yeah.
After, file any application, as long as it not, well, especially if it's denied, it cannot be the identical or substantially identical application. It has to change. But if they are looking to change what they're doing on site at any given point in time, that can come as an application back through the Planning Commission and amend the conditional use permit as applied for. It'd be a separate application, and you would consider what they're applying for at that time.
Great. Well, would we like to make a motion at this time, or all the questions been asked that need to be?
I move for the approval of item file Z 5859-D, including all staff comments and conditions, except the recommendation of denial. Oh, and then, yes, with the stated amendment. Thank you.
To require the applicant to come back within 5 years to get approval for the continued use of their temporary structure, correct?
Second.
Yes.
Okay, so we all know what we're voting on. We're going to vote in the affirmative again. So yes means approval with the amendment. No means against with the amendment. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Bedden,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Hodge,
Yes.
Latour,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Thomas, Commissioner Thomas, Vickers,
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank y'all. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
I think we had one item pulled off the consent agenda, item F, if I do believe that's the case.
Okay.
Would we like to have a reading of that?
Mr. Chair, item F, file number S 86709. This is the Miramont Circle preliminary plat located at the east end of Miramont Boulevard, east of Chenal Valley Drive. The applicant proposes to subdivide this 31.57 acre property into 62 lots for single-family residential development. The property is zoned R2, located at the east end of Chenal Valley Drive, east of Chenal Valley Drive at the east end of Miramont Boulevard. The average lot size is 11,700 square feet. The development will include 3,300 linear feet of new private streets. Open space tracts will be located along the west, north, and south perimeters of the subdivision. The applicant proposes to develop the subdivision in 2 phases. Phase 1 will include lots 1 through 20, block 107, and lot 39, block 107, and lots 9 through 23, block 108, and part of the open space tracts. Phase 2 will include lots 21 through 38, block 107, and lots 1 through 8, block 108, and the remaining open space tracts. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow reduced side yard setbacks of 6 feet for the proposed lots. Section 36254D2 of the zoning ordinance requires a minimum side setback of 10% of the average lot width or 8 feet maximum for R2 zone property. Staff does support this requested variance. The applicant is proposing 3,300 linear feet of new private streets with this development. Chapter 31 of the city's subdivision ordinance allows private streets as follows. Private streets may be approved by the Planning Commission to serve isolated developments. The design standards shall conform to public street standards as specified in this chapter. Private streets are permissible only in the form of cul-de-sac or short loop streets, and only when it's been determined that these streets can adequately be served by all public service utilities, or vehicles, rather. The subdivider shall provide for permanent maintenance of all private streets in the bill of assurance, and this maintenance shall include water lines, fire hydrants, and other utility facilities. Staff is supportive of the proposed private street plan. The proposed preliminary private street, Miramont Circle, will be gated approximately 150 feet east of the existing Miramont Boulevard and Miramar Boulevard intersection. A guardhouse will be adjacent to the gate, and a turnaround area with a mail kiosk will be located to the west. The mail kiosk location must be constructed in conformance with the USPS and Little Rock design standards and be ADA accessible. The applicant is requesting a variance to allow the construction of an alternate pedestrian circulation system outside the street's right-of-way. The applicant is proposing to provide paved paths for pedestrians and golf carts connecting to the adjacent developed streets to the north and connecting to the Chenal Valley Golf Course to their existing golf paths to the east and south. Section 31175 of City of Little Rock subdivision ordinance requires sidewalks to be constructed on one side of the proposed streets within this subdivision as per the master street plan standards. Staff does support the variance as requested and believes the path system will follow the general pattern of the surrounding developments in the area and the connection to the golf course. The applicant did submit all of the drainage and stormwater analysis information as required and requested by staff. The Department of Planning and Development Engineering Division has reviewed and approved this analysis. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of the requested preliminary plat subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D and E and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report.
Great. I see the applicants are approaching the podium.
Chairman Vogel, members of the commission, Mr. Collins, Mr. Moore, Mr. Overton. My name is Bill Spivey, and I appear here today along with Tim Daters of White Daters Engineers on behalf of the applicant, Potlatch Deltic. I was not here at the last meeting. However, My understanding is that the applicant voluntarily deferred this to provide additional time to meet with the members of any joining neighborhood POAs. Since that time, the applicant, through Mr. Daters, has reached out to POAs and has not received a response. We've offered to meet with them to address issues and questions which may be raised by the proposed preliminary plat before you today. We have responded to a number of emails we received, although a very small number, and one that was forwarded to us by the staff. Over the years, when I have come to these meetings and we have a limited number of members, I've typically advised my client that this is a good time to defer. Nevertheless, I understand that some additional members have joined the meeting since we began.
We have 9 of 11.
9, thank you very
10
much.
is all we have staffed.
Understood. And so it's a little different situation than it was when we started out. Plus, we know that a number of people, or at least 2 or 3 from the neighborhood, have come today, and rather than inconvenience them, we would propose at this time to reserve our time and to hear those comments and have the opportunity to come back and respond to you. Let me be clear. Our goal today is to ask you to approve this preliminary plat. We want to be open, as Potlatch-Deltic always is, with regard to comments and response to neighborhoods. And part of what we hope today is to hear from some of the neighbors and comments they may have. And we will seek to respond to each and every one of those when we come back up. So at this time, Tim, do you have anything you'd like to say? At this time, we would ask that we reserve our time, the balance of our time, until after any other folks from the neighborhoods have spoken.
Thanks. I think we have one card in opposition, Mr. Tony Hilland. I hope I got close to the pronunciation.
It's Hilliard.
Hilliard.
My name's Tony Hilliard. I live at 38 Mirabelle Court. If you could pull up that plat again that was being shown, the color plat. It was being shown. I was going to just basically put it in context. If you look at the red line on the bottom of the plat, you'll see 5 lots. That's Mirabelle Court right there. That's fine. And by the way, this was pulled because the notice that we had received about the proposed amendment to the original 2011 plat described, actually it said it was going to be for property on the on the west side of Chenal Circle or of Chenal Valley, which was different than this. So we asked that it be pulled from that last meeting because the notice incorrectly stated where the proposed change was in the original plat. In the original plat, that was from 2011, when the 5 of us bought our property that are adjacent to this, we were going to have basically 6 backyard neighbors. And now you can count the number of backyard neighbors that we're going to be having on that particular lot. It's about 11 backyard neighbors now. So that's the reason that we had our main objection there, is that you're dramatically increasing the number of houses immediately behind our property that we bought, understanding that we're going to have a limited number of neighbors. So that's the key objection there. Obviously, if that's something where they would still be interested in doing this, and y'all would still, if you still see yourself as passing this, we would at least ask that we have better buffers. There's a 40-foot buffer green zone between it, but it would at least ask them to put in some type of evergreens or something within that, among the trees there, so that it would have a better blocking of the neighborhood, since we are having as I said, a fairly dramatic increase in number of backyard neighbors. Thank you.
How many do you perceive are going to be your backyard neighbors now?
Well, if you look at that, if you look at the plat there, you've got, there's 5 of us that are backed up against this circle. My particular house is the one just below where you see that green space line on, I can't read it exactly. It looks like it's lot numbers 38 and 37. That's where I'll be having that addition. And so when you look at those number of houses, if you look through 39 and then go over to 28, that's basically the backyard neighbors now for the 5 lots that are on Mirabelle Circle. That's that part where the houses have already been built, already been purchased, already occupied for the past 5 years.
So how many do you think are going to be now your backyard neighbors?
Well, when I talk about all 5 of us, I'm counting 11.
All the way down? And then
I'm just looking
around
down that street and then the 2 on that cul-de-sac.
Okay, cool.
For the 5 of us.
Okay. I was just trying to gather the understanding of how many.
Yeah, and whereas the previous plan had it at 6. For that same area.
Okay. Did the commissioners have any questions for the opposition? Hearing none, Mr. Moore?
I'd like to point out one thing, ordinance requirement, what the ordinance actually doesn't require in this case. There are no buffer requirements per the zoning ordinance standards between 2 single-family subdivisions. They can back up to each other. The fact that the applicant is proposing a minimum of a 40-foot buffer is just above and beyond what the requirement is. Actually, there is no requirement again, so.
Thank you for that. I think the applicants wanted to answer any of your concerns upon your comments.
First, I'm going to defer to Tim, as I always do when it comes to technical matters. You don't need to hear a lawyer talking about engineering issues. And not to be argumentative, I talked to Tim while we were sitting there. As I said, I wasn't here at the last meeting, and he's confirmed that what Tony has said about the reasons for the deferral are absolutely correct. We did respond by saying that the time would be used in an effort to visit with people in the neighborhood and to hopefully inform and address issues that have come up. Let me say a couple of things. I'm going to defer to Tim. Potlatch, Deltic, and Deltic before it has been developing neighborhoods in this area for over 30 years. One of the objectives has long been to develop a variety of neighborhoods. This is not the only neighborhood on Chenal Valley Circle with lots this size. Three neighborhoods down Howland Court, the lots are the same size. The Arbors. So this is not, a product which is unknown in Chenal Valley. I think, as Mr. Moore alluded, there's over 11,000 square feet per lot, which is significantly more than the minimum lots permitted. And also, as has been Potlatch Deltic's mode of operation throughout its development, there's a buffer. I'm going to let Tim talk about the buffer. I think we want to try and respond to Mr. Hilliard's concerns there with respect to the buffering, but Potlatch Deltic includes buffers, I think, in every neighborhood it's developed, virtually every neighborhood that's been developed. There's some that have been developed up against us without them, but for the most part, this is the case. So let me be quiet, step back, and let Tim talk.
Commissioners, Potlatch Deltic includes land use buffers between single-family residential development because it adds value to the lots around the perimeter of the development. People like to know that they're not going to be sharing their rear fence with their neighbor. They like 40 or 50 feet of trees in between. And what we have discussed with Mr. Hilliard is that although these areas are wooded, we will come back in and add understory plants to kind of provide some evergreen planting underneath them. But the type and number of plants that thrive underneath mature trees is relatively limited, but we can come back in and infill on the buffers with additional plantings. That adds value to both neighborhoods. The minimum buffer width between this subdivision and the adjacent subdivision is 40 feet, but the bulk of the buffer, as you can see, exceeds 40 feet, and in some cases the buffer is over 100 feet. So while there are more lots, they're actually further away than the 40 feet. The lots in this subdivision are actually slightly larger than the lots in Mr. Hilliard's subdivision. They're narrower, but they are much deeper. This has been a real popular size lot within Chenal Valley recently. People are building somewhat smaller houses. They're orienting the garages in a different manner, so we need a deeper lot, but a narrower lot still permits them to build a nice house. We would ask that you would approve this today, and would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think you hit on one question that I had. The lot size in the Maribel Court area is around how many square feet?
Those lots are 85 by 130 feet. I think that's just slightly over 11,000 square feet.
And then the ones in the new development?
They're 75 feet wide and 150 feet deep. The traditional, on the 75-foot wide lot, they typically construct the garage side-loaded in front of the house. And so they need a little bit deeper lot because they do have a garage in front of the house instead of a part of the main house facade itself. It's just changed a little bit. This is actually the third time we have revised this preliminary plat. We originally prepared a preliminary plat on this area in 1999. It was revised sometime in the mid-2000s, then again in 2011 or 2014 when we started some of the adjacent phases. But I do appreciate your support, and we think we're doing the right thing, and we'll do whatever we can to improve and enhance the buffer between the two subdivisions. And if we have any, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions by the commission? Any questions for the applicant from the commission? Hearing none, I guess a motion would be in order.
Move for the approval of item S867Q9, including all staff comments and conditions.
Second.
Thank you. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Bedden,
Yes.
Brooks,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Haynes,
Yes.
Hodge. Tour,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Thomas, Vickers,
Yes.
Vogel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate all for coming out tonight. If there are any public comments, now would be the time to make them. Do we have any public comments from anybody in the audience? Hearing no public comments, I think Director Collins wanted to address a certain item that has been brought up by the Board of Directors for us to contemplate how we would like to address it and possibly form a task force or subcommittee. But I'll let Director Collins speak to it.
Yes, thanks, Chair. What has been asked of at the Board of Directors is concerns over the area in which we notify adjacent property owners of rezoning matters, which currently per our bylaws sets it at 200. There is a specific ordinance in plan development, a section of the code that does specify that also, but that is a bylaw. The notification on site, the signage is a bylaw for the Planning Commission. The 200-foot notification for standard zoning and other uses is a bylaw by the Planning Commission. A question has been raised to expand that. Should we expand that and what that is? So I would like to request Chair of the Planning Commission for consideration to look at that issue and possibly amend the bylaws, but I cannot at this time suggest an amendment because that does incur additional responsibilities by a developer. Could also incur additional costs by a developer for the number of lots that may be affected based upon whatever increase that is. That's why the suggestion for just a subcommittee to kind of look at that, let staff analyze it and present it to the committee on what that is and present it to the Planning Commission for their bylaws amendment if y'all choose to do so.
Can you remind us what the state statute is for notifications?
Yes, they're the only state statute for notification is notification in a newspaper of prominent circulation in the jurisdiction at least 15 days prior to the meeting. Staff takes care of that for the commission and the applicants. We post that in the daily record to do that. And we also keep a file copy of that when that happens. All other notifications are supplemental and do not require that per the state. That does not mean that they cannot be supplemental for zoning to be heard, and it currently is in the bylaws to do so for that. And also in the plan development ordinance, it's also in there for a 200-foot, but that is only in an appeal situation, not in the actual application. That is still governed by the Planning Commission bylaws.
And so it is property line to property line. There's no
Yes.
front
in other
door
words,
to
even
front
if it touches
door.
it and one lot is in it a foot out of 100 foot on a lot, then that counts.
Well, I think with the new year approaching, I think it would be wise of us to, look at this in the 2023 year, and maybe at next board meeting or next commission meeting, we can have a little more robust discussion about what we need to do as a commission that's been asked of us. So in the meantime, can y'all put together your recommendation of how we should form a subcommittee and then timelines? Because obviously it would be something in the future that we'd have to notify all the different developers, and certain applications that are already in the pipeline would
Yes.
not be affected. So, I mean, this would be calling out into the future, maybe middle of the year of 2023, that this would go into effect if we do indeed change the distance
Yeah, that is
requirement.
correct. Any application at any time that's been filed would not adhere to that at that time. So it is 3 to 4 months out once you look to adopt something like that of what is affected, of what is in the process of being heard. And I agree 100%. The individuals and people do think about developers are affected, but that is also, as you heard today, that could also be a small, at home, person that's looking for a special use permit that would have to adhere to that same requirement. And that is an impact to what they're looking to do. And that could potentially be additional cost based upon that distance. And we don't know that yet. It does need to be looked at. And we definitely do need to go out and have public comment other than the commission to bring before the commission what we hear out in the area.
And this would be the Planning Commission changing its own bylaws, so we would not need the approval of the Board of Directors to change those bylaws, or would we?
No, the Planning Commission, by authority of the state law, is the ones that amend their bylaws. The board may also choose to enact that in their zoning codes, but that still would have to come back before the Planning Commission and a recommendation, and then to the board, because it'd be amendment to the zoning requirements.
Seems like a very cumbersome hurdle, especially for urban dense areas where there's going to be a lot of, parcels that would touch linearly, if that's a word. So I would really like to defer us making a decision on it, what we're going to do until the new year, pending potential change of leadership or something of that nature. And in the meantime, maybe y'all can kind of gather some facts for us so it can outline what we would need to do at that time. Obviously, you've mentioned forming a subcommittee, looking at the impact economically, the public hearings that could possibly be required. And, I certainly appreciate the Board of Directors desiring that, our citizens are notified. I do think we go above and beyond the standard that's set in the state law. And I think we have a process that is certainly working. We get many communications when, people are certainly opposed to something. And I hope people are not missing the due process here, but I think at this time, it'd be wise of us to kind of hear back from y'all next meeting what we would need to do to make this fully, come to fruition. Is that an all right?
That is doable. Thank you for the consideration.
Well, hearing no public comments and hearing the item that Mr. Collins wanted us to address, I think at this time we can adjourn the meeting. Thank y'all very much for coming.